Hello, beloved. It's me, James, and it is time for sacred reading. If you're new to sacred reading, I periodically give instructions, so today's one of those periodic instruction days. Sacred reading is based on the belief that when we read a sacred text, it can speak to us in fresh ways, speak into our lives, maybe through a word, an image, or a phrase that arises in us as we listen to the text. So believing that, we read a text. Generally, I recommend reading it aloud. We have gotten very used to reading things in our head and not reading aloud, which, works when you're just trying to skim information. But when you're trying to listen deeply, the more you can fully engage yourself in the listening, the more you're likely to hear what the text might be saying. So by reading it aloud, you're engaging your vocal cords, your support from your diaphragm, your lungs. The vibration is being heard in your ears. The text is speaking to you in ways that perhaps bring out something more, and you're less likely to miss parts. Now, when I do sacred reading on my own, I read it aloud 3 times. When we do it together in this format, in order to keep the time together a little bit shorter, I only read it aloud once. You listen, image, word, phrase that rises in you. Maybe a question arises in you from it. Maybe that word will be encouragement. It will be calling you out because you weren't paying attention to something in your life that you're reminded of. Lots of different things can happen when you're doing sacred reading. Sometimes when you don't have the words to ask God a question or speak in prayer, the reading will actually open you up to something you might say. So these words, that's what we do in sacred reading. We have been reading the book of Ruth slowly in small snippets. Last week was just one verse. Ruth chapter 2, verse 13. This week we are reading Ruth chapter 2, verses 14 through 16. I'm going to set the scene. I'll do it in as short an order as I possibly can. In the book Ruth, it begins with Naomi and her husband Elimelech and their 2 sons. They are experiencing a famine in and around Israel near Bethlehem, and so they leave the area and move to Moab. While in Moab, Naomi's sons find wives, Orpah and Ruth, and they get married. Shortly thereafter, the time frame is not clear, Naomi's husband Elimelech dies, and both of her sons die, leaving her and her 2 daughters-in-law, Orpah and Ruth. Naomi suggests, that Orpah and Ruth go back to their people. And part of the reason why she does has nothing to do with whether she loves them or not. It's practicality. Women could not own property and employ themselves. They required being attached at that time to a male family member, whether it is their husband, their father, their brother, or a close relative of some kind. And there was an obligation placed on those male relatives to actually provide care for the female relatives who end up without a spouse. So that is what the case is. So Naomi sends Ruth and Orpah back. Orpah reluctantly agrees to go back. Ruth will not leave Naomi. So together they travel back to Israel, to Bethlehem. And when they come back, in order to feed themselves, Ruth goes and works in local fields. Part of the law was that the poor could be allowed to glean in fields. The leftover grain that dropped to the ground and fruits and those kinds of things that were left, they could be allowed to glean from the edges to make sure that they had something to eat. So there was a way to protect the poor, those folks who found themselves too poor to sustain themselves. Ruth goes and does that. She ends up working in the field of Boaz, who knows Naomi. Boaz instructs his workers to not bother her, to let her gather from the field, and even tells Ruth that she is welcome to drink from the pitchers of water that are brought out there for the workers. So feel free to drink from that water. And so we pick up more or less there. In Boaz's field, Ruth is gleaning during the day. So here we are, beginning chapter 2, verse 14. When noontime arrived, Boaz said to Ruth, "Come here and share my bread and dip some of it in the wine." Ruth sat with the rest of the workers while Boaz prepared a bowl of roasted barley as a snack. She ate until she was no longer hungry and still had some left over. Then she got up to continue her gathering. Boaz ordered the binders, "Let her pick from among the bundles you have gathered and do not hinder her. In fact, go so far as to drop some grain from your bundles and let her collect it without fear." You're certainly welcome to stop the video at this point and to do your own reflection, pick up where we left off, read it yourself in your own version if you want to, and figure out what it might say to you. But I'm going to share with you what I hear in this passage. At this point, I see Boaz going above and beyond even the requirement that was part of the law. The law, actually, it was his obligation as a field owner to allow people to glean. But knowing how Ruth is caring for her mother-in-law and looking out for her, Boaz has gone a little extra distant. Not only can she gather what is dropped by accident, but he even encourages his worker to drop some on purpose. So there's more for Ruth to gather. So there'll be enough for her to take home and make sure that Naomi eats. So we see in this kind of a generosity, going above and beyond the law to do what is best for this young woman, Ruth, and her mother-in-law, Naomi. Oftentimes we speak about going to the letter of the law, doing the very minimum that's required. Heck, if you look at the Ten Commandments, they really are laws about the very minimum that you should expect in society. The very minimum you should do is these things. But obviously, there is a hope that will inspire us to go beyond the bare minimum. And this is a case where Boaz has gone beyond the bare minimum so that he can provide for Naomi and Ruth. And that kind of going above and beyond is a kind of calling I think fits into my life and perhaps into yours. The call to go above and beyond, not just to do the minimum, to do the best that we are capable of doing in the moment we're capable of doing it. Sometimes that might be the bare minimum. Sometimes that's the bare minimum. But when we can do more, I see in Boaz an inspiration. He in part's inspired, I think, by Ruth and Ruth's care for her mother-in-law, something she was not required by law to do. In fact, because she was not even from Israel, but she went above and beyond what was required of her to care for her mother-in-law. And perhaps that was an inspiration, I say perhaps, for Boaz to do the same. And I wonder in my life where I might be called to go above and beyond. And where all of us might be called to go above and beyond. Sure, we can get by with the minimum. But I think this story is one that invites us to go beyond that place, to stretch ourselves and to do what God might want to see us do, more than the minimum, as much as we can, as much as we've been gifted, to turn around and let that gift be a gift to other people. That's what I see in this text. So I don't know what you saw. I encourage you to share it. If you want to write it, if you've watched this on the Facebook page, please share any thoughts you have. Always welcome to hear it. If you watch it on the YouTube channel, you're certainly welcome to write your comments there as well. Any thoughts that you have. It's a powerful text. Next week we pick up with verse 17. But until then, take this time to reflect and use sacred reading as a tool for you to draw closer. And perhaps in your everyday life, as I feel challenged to, try to go above and beyond what might be minimally required of you. Until the next time, wish you all the best and remind you, you are infinitely precious and unconditionally loved for the gift you already are.